Back in 2009, when I was still relatively new to the PlayStation 3, one of my favourite games of the year was called Shatter. It was a bat and ball game, but it revolutionised the genre, because although I traditionally quite liked Breakout and Arcanide style games, I'd always get frustrated towards the end of each level because there's always 2 or 3 little bits of like blocks or objects that you could never bloody well get. And so you'd be spending ages trying to catch them out and lining them up, and I'd get frustrated at it. Shatter had a really good idea of being able to suck and blow air from your bat that would change the trajectory of the ball in play. So you could then, with pinpoint precision, blow and suck the air to change the trajectory, almost airbending the ball so that it could hit certain blocks. And that was the concept that Shatter went away with. It also translated across to loads of other parts of the game, and it made it such a fantastic experience. So much so that in 2012 I actually uploaded a playthrough onto my channel, so that's how you can tell that I genuinely loved this game. So, flash forward to 2022, we have Shatter Remastered Deluxe. Now this is the PS4 and PS5 version cross-buy that I bought, and I have to say I've personally very much enjoyed the vast majority of this game, as it does appear to be the definitive version for the vast majority. But there's 1 or 2 little hiccups that I'll get to towards the end of this video that made me go, needs a patch. So what is Shatter if you've never played it before? It's a bat and ball game that is taking various geometric blocks and making you try to smash them all up with your ball. You can have as many balls in play as you want because they're all of your lives. So if you want to go mad, you can throw all 3 or 4 balls onto the screen at once. You just got to keep them in play by moving your bat either up and down, across the bottom of the screen if you're horizontal, or the other big thing for Shatter was that it introduced orb or circular style levels, and so you're kind of going around the bottom rim of the circle. The blocks and their geometric shapes that sit inside them give you a clue as to what they do. So circular ones act like screws and quite often will rotate anything that's attached to it around so that they'll become mechanical. Square blocks will float around, and if they become detached from everything else, they kind of act like gravity flowing towards you, and so you've got to kind of actively blow them back. Otherwise, when you're sucking the air in, they'll all fly towards you and bump you off the screen. So you've got to watch out for that. And then you've got cross blocks, and they kind of act like linchpins. So sometimes you'll have blocks that will be hanging off of a cross. So if you break the cross before you break everything that's attached to it, then you've suddenly got loads of floating blocks everywhere, thus causing you carnage and chaos. As you smash all of these blocks, you're collecting shards, and these shards essentially are your multiplier for your score. So what you're wanting to do is to make sure that you've got quite a few all together in one place, and then you'll suck the air back in and it will suck all the shards in towards you, thus increasing your multiplier. But you'll need to be careful because of the carnage that you've caused as you've smashed all of those things might mean that there's now like 50 blocks all flying towards you that are now unhinged and unshackled from those crosses or screws or other types of blocks that are out there. So you've got to kind of balance the two. The other thing that the shards do is that they trigger 2 specific moves. The first thing is a shard storm, which you do by pressing triangle when the bar at the bottom of the screen is full. And this unleashes like an Uzi gun shard attack that will smash up any blocks that are in your path, except for the purple ones. And then if you've got loads and loads of shards that you want to suck in, you can press and hold your shield button. And what that does is it will ricochet all of the shards that are coming towards you and push them back like almost like a spread shot, I would guess, to try and get rid of more blocks too. Those 2 moves are great for, especially that ricochet option, are great for getting those high scores. And high scores are shown at the end of each of the 10 worlds with 8 levels in, so that you can go up against global online leaderboards as well as friend online leaderboards too. Bosses will also play into this kind of sucking and blowing mechanic who misses, and it's usually around trying to suck or blow off oh dear, their armour so that you can then expose their weak point and then hit it with the ball or your shard shots. And although they are requiring a little bit of skill to get things going, Shatter is very generous with its extra lives, or balls for that matter, and being able to give you plenty of chances to recuperate and recover yourself. So although it is frantic, it's never too hard, if that makes sense. From a graphical perspective, I think the PS4 and PS5 versions do look really, really good and very clean and solid and low poly. I think there's something to be said though around this minimalistic, low poly, glossy sheen that makes everything feel very clean versus slightly more stylized towards the original. And I'm not saying one is better or worse than the other, but it is certainly a slight difference. And when you combine that with the fact that I am like a worshipper of the original, it kind of makes me go, it's lost some of its original characterization, I guess. What is great though is that the original soundtrack by Module is still here. I adore this soundtrack. I bought it separately off Bandcamp because I was that much of a fan, and it just grooves that kind of electronica rock beautifully and perfectly, and it is still as great as it ever was. The other thing that is slightly different in this version is the controls, and here's where I run into a very slight issue with this version of the game, and it's purely around the orb levels. When you move, particularly on a PS5 version, up or down or left or right depending on the horizontal or vertical levels, the movement feels solid, and although you can move the analog stick a tiny little bit each way and that will slow down your movement, it feels right. And I know that's like an odd way to describe it, but it makes sense to me and it's congruent to what I'm expecting. The orb ones, your bat moves too fast, and so you've got to be so ginger if you want to move something slowly or just a tiny little bit. Because if you move the analog stick, and quite often remember you're in a frantic arcade environment, so you're like almost twitch throwing the analog stick left and right, it's really difficult to then be tiny and precise. And so quite often your bat just overshoots where you're wanting to go and you're like, no, that's not what I was expecting. And because it's so over the top, it kind of makes the orb levels feel a little bit less precise than the other levels. And that is the sole issue that I have with this remaster. If they fix that, then I wouldn't have a problem with saying that this is probably the best version of the game that is out there to date. But until that orb version or orb problem is fixed, I would almost say you're better off buying the original, because particularly on PC, the original, perfectly playable, still utterly fantastic and engrossing, it's a third of this remaster's price. Whereas if you don't have a PS3 and you only live on consoles and you've never played Shatter before, this game is still fantastic. Go buy, go buy, go buy. I think it's an odd one where they've probably gone, we've remastered this game, yay, 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 yay. And actually, us lot that bought the original are probably better off with the original, despite the fact that this is the most gleamiest, shiniest version of the lot, until they fix that orb issue. So yeah, buyers of the original, I think you can probably hold off and wait for this. If you've never played Shatter before, my good God, buy it now. Written review over on highplanegames.com. I hope that was informative and helpful. It's an odd nuance to try and balance with this, because I'm clearly nostalgic and I do have a soft spot for this game. But it's a really difficult one to justify why you should rebuy something when it's just 4K graphics and slightly less precise controls. So it's giveth with one hand, taketh with the other.
Higher Plane Games is part of the Higher Plane Network, a completely independent media outlet supported by people like you. The goal is to create the best possible content that cultivates a richer indie scene for games as well as music and entertainment. To find out more and to get involved, visit patreon.com/higherplane-network. Your support makes all the difference, and in return you'll gain access to bonus content and downloads. Thank you for watching.